Hi Krishna, everybody. Welcome to today's morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. As Diego Prabhu will be giving us or enlightening us by speaking about 1.8.38. We will start today's class by singing and glorifying the Lord and elevating ourselves to none other than Sri Vrindavan Dham. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tiravarachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jamuna Tiravarachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Jaya Guru Deva 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 Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Bol.
Jai, Hare Krishna, Premarupa Madhavi, thank you so much. And Narottam Vilas Prabhu, thank you. Happy Sunday, dear devotees. I'm very happy to be with you all today on such a calm morning. Depending on where you are, it might be raining. It's very auspicious. Prabhupada said when it rains at night, it's very good for the plants. So today we'll be reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, the first canto, Creation, chapter 8, Prayers by Queen Kunti, in verse 38. So we'll begin with the invocation prayers for the Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashta Prayeshwa Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Rutama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavatir Naishtiki Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai. Hmm. So we're very fortunate to be here today, reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, and I'm very fortunate to be in the presence of so many devotees and being given a chance to serve you all. And I hope to say something. I hope to pronounce and read nicely, first of all, and then I hope that I can say something that helps you begin your day as well. So I'll read the verse, and then whoever would like to repeat may do so. Kevayam namarupa byam yadubi saha pandava bhavato darshanam yarhi rishikanam iveshitu. Kevayam namarupa byam yadubi saha pandava Bhavato darshanam yarhi Krishekanam iveshitu Kevayam namarupabhyam Yadubi sahapandava Bhavato darshanam yarhi Krishikanam iveshitu.
Kivayam namarupabhyam yadubi sah pandava bhavato darshanam yarhi rishikanam iveshitu.
Kevayam namarupabhyam yadubihi saha pandavah bhavato darshanam yarhi rishikanam iveshituhu.
Thank you. Ke, who are, Vayam, we, Nama Rupabhyam, without fame and ability, Yadubihi, with the Yadus, Saha, along with, Pandavaha, and the Pandavas, Bhavataha, your, Adarshanam, absence, Yarhi, as if, Rishikanam, of the senses, Iwa, like, Ishutuhu, of the living being. Translation and purport given by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Ki Jai. As the name and fame of a particular body is finished with the disappearance of the living spirit, similarly, if you do not look upon us, all our fame and activities, along with the Pandavas and the Yadus, will end at once. Purport. Kunti Devi is quite aware that the existence of the Pandavas is due to Sri Krishna only. The Pandavas are undoubtedly well established in name and fame and are guided by the great King Yudhishthira, who is morality personified. And the Yadus are undoubtedly great allies. But without the guidance of Lord Krishna, all of them are non-entities. As much as the senses of the body are useless without the guidance of consciousness. No one should be proud of his prestige, power, and fame without being guided by the favor of the Supreme Lord. The living beings are always dependent, and the ultimate dependable object is the Lord himself. We may therefore invent by our advancement of material knowledge all sorts of counteracting material resources, but without being guided by the Lord, all such inventions end in fiasco, however strong and stout the reactionary elements may be. Kevayam namarupabhyam yadubi sahapandavaha bhavato darshanam yardhi rishikanam iveshituhu. As the name and fame of a particular body is finished with the disappearance of the living spirit, similarly, if you do not look upon us, all our fame and activities along with the Pandavas and Yadus will end at once. I'm thinking that when I pray to the spiritual master to help me, it's mostly to just keep my mind focused on what Prabhupada already said and not invent something foolish. Basically, not let myself get in the way of Prabhupada's presentation. In the last sentence, Srila Prabhupada says that we may invent by our own advancement of material knowledge all sorts of counteracting material resources. To depend on. But without being guided by the Lord, all such inventions end in fiasco, however strong and stout the reactionary elements may be. So if we want to cross a river or a body of water, we may invent a boat. And the earliest boats, at least in the perspective of modern historians, or the simplest ones to make that were made in the United States by the Native Americans, were carved out from tree trunks. So these fell trees would be, cut in half, and then they'd be hollowed out, and then people would use them to float across rivers. And then there's greater boats that have, various trunks of trees that are higher, that can hold more weight and more people, and that don't flip over as easy as canoes might. But that might not be good enough to make it through an entire ocean so well. So they need to build something very large with masts, and maybe something that's not being moved by rudder, but which is being moved by the wind and all that. And the greatest of such boats is the Titanic, of course. And if you've heard about the last 100 years of history, actually 106 years of history, I think it sunk on 1914. So you may be knowing where the story is going, that before the Titanic set sail, the very humble architect said not even God himself could sink this ship. but nobody talks about the Titanic because it made the journey. They talk about the Titanic because it was a fiasco. And it's interesting because there's no scientific reason why the Titanic wouldn't work, right? You look at the Titanic and all the laws of buoyancy have been followed. They don't have any holes on the bottom of the ship or on the side of the ship to let water in, so it's buoyant, it floats. It's a marvel that something metal can float in the water, but if you keep air inside, then the law of distribution of weight and all that the water will stay on the outside, the air will cause the very heavy object to float. They had life rafts, a huge engine, so much coal. I'm sure they had enough coal for, let's say that they got stranded in the middle and they had enough left over, and food for days. So there's no trees in the middle of the ocean. So they had all of the provisions that they needed. And so they were ready for a journey across the Atlantic Ocean. So this is what Prabhupada says, all sorts of counteracting material resources. So all of the intelligence of how to make a boat float, all of the foresight of knowing what problems we might run into. What if we have a week or 2 or 3 delay? We have to have that much food. But without being guided by the Lord. So the most inauspicious way to begin anything, a day, the virgin flight or the virgin voyage of a boat, is to lose dependence on God. So to say, not even God himself. So essentially to say, I dare God to prove me wrong, which is not, historically, that is not the winning side. That is not the winning side of history, to be on the side that you challenge God. Everyone that's done so has died. So it makes me think about this, that I am not as intelligent as the architect that designed the Titanic. And I can't, build something that attracts so many people. But I do want to be guided by Srila Prabhupada and Krishna. And I trust the saints when they say that that's a better position to be in. We may have nothing materially, but if we have faith that we're part of Krishna's family and that he cares about everyone in his family, then history is full of examples that Sri Krishna is the person to trust. So that's a good position to be in. Srimati Kunti Maharani also says something interesting in her prayer, that she references Krishna's glance, or if you do not look upon us, which is an allusion, not an illusion, but an allusion with an A, to the creation of the material universe. So when Krishna decides to create, or when Mahavishnu decides to create the cosmic manifestation, he casts his glance upon Prakriti. And in that way, the jivas come into contact with, the jivas are injected into the Prakriti. And so our history of the universe begins with the glance of God. So because God decided to look upon the material nature, the material nature began to go through its necessary transformations. And so you could say that the material universe doesn't exist until God looks at it. So it's not a lie to say that, the sun doesn't exist if Krishna doesn't look at it, or a person doesn't exist if God doesn't look at that. And so Kunti Maharani is saying something both, philosophically ground, but she's saying it not concerned with the philosophy of it or like the scientific reasons why it's true, but that same scientific truth has become an emotional truth for her, or an experiential truth. It's one thing to know, this is the difference between jnana and vijnana. So jnana is knowing that God is the source of everything, but vijnana is knowing that my life is empty without God. So jnana is knowing that the universe doesn't begin until Mahavishnu looks at it, and vijnana is knowing our family. If you do not look upon us, all our fame and activities, along with the Pandavas and Yadus, will end at once. So that's assimilated knowledge that she has. And it's very interesting because sometimes I wonder, won't all of this philosophical knowledge of, not that I have a lot, but that I want to have a lot, I think, when am I ever going to start feeling something for Krishna? How much, it's like, we want to develop knowledge about Krishna. Krishna says, Janma karma cha me divyam. And so, okay, let me know the tattvata of your janma and your karma. Let me know about your activities. And then the more that you learn about his activities, it's explained that when Krishna steps into this universe, and takes his first step in this universe and gets ready for his next, he's beginning to take a first step in another universe. And when he's on his third step in this one, he's taken a second one in another universe. And he's just beginning to take his first step in another. So in that way, when we're looking from the perspective of our chronology, we can say, well, how is it that Krishna is taking, so many steps simultaneously in different places? But we can also think that Krishna is just taking, X amount of steps, and that he's allowing universes to see those steps. But there's also nothing wrong in saying that Krishna is actually taking simultaneously different steps everywhere. And then you start thinking of this cowherd boy that is, sitting. This is my favorite picture of Krishna. It's a cowherd boy that's sitting on I don't know if you can see, but you can see maybe a little bit. So he's sitting right in front of a peacock, and then another peacock is looking at his feet. And then this cowherd boy is doing all of that. But how am I supposed to see him as a cowherd boy? I have all of this jnana blocking me from just seeing him as the person that he is, or the person that he wants to be seen as, or the person that he enjoys most being seen like. And so I wonder, will all this jnana end up, blocking me? But it's not for me to doubt now. I simply have to accept that I don't have spontaneous attraction for Krishna, but I have curious attraction. I'm so curious about who this person is and how my life is related to his. And I trust that the example that Prabhupada gave, that if you hold iron to fire for long enough, that iron will develop the qualities of fire. So Krishna is full of love. And if I can somehow keep my intellect next to him, I mean, Krishna says that one adores me with their intellect by studying this conversation between you and I, O Arjuna. So by studying the Bhagavad Gita, we can keep our intellect next to him. And by studying the prayers of the devotees, we can see that they have knowledge. Prabhupada says that, actually he says in the teachings of Queen Kunti, on the same verse, he says that, she, actually in the first verse of the teachings of Queen Kunti, Srila Prabhupada says she knew that, he was not only her nephew. Srimati Kunti Maharani knew that Krishna wasn't only her nephew, but the point is that it's that knowledge is overwhelmed by love. So I trust that eventually, by being in contact with such a loving person as Krishna and his devotees, that one day I will actually come to love him. But what we're getting a glimpse here from the devotees that it happens, that both of those things can be held simultaneously. And we have glimpses of this. If we don't want to accept it on faith alone, we have glimpses of this in our personal life, that for whoever's married or whoever's dating someone, or whoever is in a position of taking care of someone else, or including a pet, that there may be so many material faults with the people we care of. My dog is very whiny. She complains so much. But I know that she has a relationship with Krishna. And I know that Krishna cares about her. And right now, Krishna is giving me the opportunity to care for her. And so how can I check Krishna's love from getting to her? That would just be interrupting. And so I have to, despite her faults, be forgiving of how much she whines, and try more and more to just be a kind, loving person to her. So what happens is that in the beginning, when we're practicing rules and regulations, we may have to artificially remind ourselves to ignore our knowledge of either faults or glories. In Krishna's case, glories, and in the case of material conditioned living entities, faults. And we might have to artificially check that and just say, no, you should, as a principle, love. In the Bible, first they quote Jesus Christ as saying, the highest religion is to love God above all things and love everyone as yourself. But then later he's quoted as saying, love God above all things and your neighbors as yourself. Oh no, and love your neighbors as I have loved you. So it's almost like, maybe we can't be trusted to love each other as we love ourselves, because if we think we're material bodies, we may not love each other very well. But we should love each other as the spiritual master loves us. So Srila Prabhupada is a great example of how we can ignore the shortcomings in each other and ourselves, and with unfailing patience and encouragement, and with the same eternal love as Krishna himself, love each other. So that struck me about what Srimati Kunti Maharani said, that she was making an allusion to the creation of the material world, but looking at the creation of her own family and the sustenance of her own family is being maintained by Christians just looking at them. And that's a very poetic thing to feel. That's a very profound emotion. The Srimad Bhagavatam is amazing because it's going to take us step by step through the it's going to take us through the ocean of the material world by letting us swim in the devotional moods of love for God. Earlier, the Srimad Bhagavatam was described as the Swarupa of the Lord. And Srila Prabhupada said that by carefully listening to the Srimad Bhagavatam, by giving oral reception, that we will come to experience the form of God, the form of Krishna. And in the same way that when the sun rises, you can see the wrinkles on your palms, and you can see your fingernails, and if there's if they need to be cut, or you can see if you have any scratches, or what color your pants and your clothing is. When we see God, Krishna, we know ourselves. But actually, in this regard, there's a funny story about when I first purchased Krishna book. This is a wonderful devotee that used to live in Los Angeles, who now lives in Atlanta. His name is Shashtakrit Prabhu. And he used to man the tables in front of the Los Angeles temple. And I had finished reading Sri Shapanishad, or I was reading Sri Shapanishad. And Prabhupada talks about self-realization and the different stages of realization, that there's Brahman realization, Paramatma realization, and then realization of Bhagavan. He talks about self-realization a lot. And so I wanted a book that was specifically about self-realization. And so I went to the temple. I didn't go to the feast, but I just went to the books. And Shastrakrit Prabhu was there, though I didn't know him yet. And I said, I would like a book on self-realization, please. And so he got, The Science of Self-Realization. Here it is. And then I said, with all humility, no, I already know about myself. I'd like to know about Krishna now. And oh, okay, Prabhu said. And then he got me Krishna book. And I said, that's the size. That's the right size book. It was very thick. It's that purple Krishna book with Srimati Radharani and Krishna on the front. And I asked him how much it was, and he said, you give what you can. And that broke my heart, because it was not only did this person have an answer to every question that I had, book on self-realization, that's the book, Science of Self-Realization, but a book on Krishna, and then he has that. But then he's not charging me anything for it. He says whatever I want. And I felt like crying. All I had was a $5 bill, but I cherished that book. But what's interesting is that, for the record, I am not self-realized. But I think that it's interesting that I even in my own foolishness and arrogance, I understood that our image of self-realization, our image of ourself is not complete until we know who we're related to. For example, a father means, one person's relationship to another. A husband means one person's relationship to another. A wife means one person's relationship into another. It's not, I'm a wife independently. It's not, I'm a father independently. And here Srila Prabhupada says, the living beings are always dependent, and the ultimate dependable object is the Lord himself. So when we think, we have to strive for self-realization, what that sentence really means is, I want to know Krishna and my relation to him. That's self-realization. It's not just this, I independently want self-realization. And this is why the process of bhakti requires everyone together. I mean, the first step is shraddha. First, you have to have faith that it's even possible. But then the next one is sadhu sangha. So there's, after you have faith that, you believe that there's a supreme person, that there's more to life than the material world, all of the steps after that include relationships. And I think that's very telling, because in the United States right now, independence is, it's a nice word. And that actually reminds me of something that I'd like to speak of, but it's a nice word, but the word doesn't have so much meaning. So when people say, I want to be independent, what they really mean is they would like to be independent from things that harm them. But if you're, no one says I want to be independent from food, because food is nourishing you. But we are dependent right now on a system that is very impersonal. And because we're people, we want to be independent from that system. So whatever your political leaning is, whatever your leaning is in the world, unless you live, in Mayapur, the president, or unless you live in a temple, your president is not encouraging you to practice self-realization. And so necessarily, everything that is encouraged by that system is diverting you from self-realization. And so we're being encouraged to be dependent on toys, by which I mean, phones and other gadgets. and we're being encouraged to be dependent on the mode of passion. And Krishna describes in chapter 18 of the Bhagavad Gita that those who, that knowledge in the mode of passion is that knowledge that sees different living and that sees difference and separation among one living entity. So that government that tries to tell you, you don't be friends with the Republicans, you don't be friends with the Democrats, you don't be friends with Black people, you don't be friends with women, you don't be friends with rich people, with poor people. All of that knowledge that is obsessed with distinctions is not serving us, because our world is interconnected. We're all related to Krishna in one very big family. And if we're being taught individually to separate from each other and compete against each other, then actually we're not growing up. We're not growing up, and we're wasting a lot of valuable time in this world, mistakenly fighting against each other when we should be fighting against our own tendency to disobey Krishna. But this brings me to a point that I'd like to speak about for briefly. In the teachings of Queen Kunti, on page 230 on the copy that I have, on Srila Prabhupada's commentary on this verse, he says, "We all have consciousness, but what is this consciousness? It is Krishna consciousness. We have forgotten Krishna, and therefore we simply say consciousness. But really, consciousness means Krishna consciousness, because without Krishna, we cannot have consciousness. Without the sun, how can there be sunshine? Therefore, we say sunshine and not just shine." Similarly, consciousness means Krishna consciousness. This requires a little intelligence to understand, but devotees like Kunti have this intelligence and understanding. Therefore, Kunti says, the Pandavas and Yadus are so important, but what is actually our value? Sometimes when Prabhupada is, he's a genius. I mean, that genius is actually a term that we give to mundane people for coming up with something. What I'm trying to do is communicate like how much admiration I have for Srila Prabhupada for being just so intelligent, and almost imperceptibly intelligent. Like it's like you have to be intelligent to realize someone else is intelligent, but Prabhupada makes himself accessible to even unintelligent people. This point that he mentions about consciousness actually means Krishna consciousness in the same way that shine really means sunshine, because it's, again, relationship. So consciousness does not exist independently. Consciousness exists because Krishna is conscious. So nityo nityanam chetanas chetananam. Among all of the individual conscious entities, there is one chetanas. There is one supremely conscious being. The same way that shine doesn't, photons don't just appear out of nowhere. Photons come from a source. And so what is happening to a devotee is that they are seeing themselves in relationship with Krishna. So that's why they're Krishna conscious. Their consciousness not only is turned toward the direction of Krishna, but they also realize that their consciousness is dependent on Krishna and in the service of Krishna. So it's not American consciousness, and it's not, Indian consciousness, or it's not, democratically conscious, because conscious doesn't depend on that. So it's like having to limit it by those irrelevant made-up terms is kind of pointless. But what I'd like to speak about is how the Vedic literatures seem like a dictionary of terms, in a sense. Because in the Bhagavad Gita, for example, Krishna describes Bina Prakritir, Ashtada. Krishna describes 8 material elements that he says belong to me. Now, this is just this is a dictionary term. So when you see, this, you'll say, well, this is made of, some earth, some air, you know, some space, some ether. And if you look at water, you'll be like, oh, that's, just the water element. But if we learn those terms from someone else, we won't be seeing them completely. So when we learn about the world from school, from a contemporary school, we learn that, the world started from a big bang, and that the earth, there's, different types of rock and sedimentary rock, and we learn about the divisions on the map. And so when we might be right here and call this, American soil. And then we go to India and we may call it Indian soil. We go to South America and we call this Brazilian soil. But that term Brazilian soil doesn't exist anywhere. Krishna says it's just soil. It's bhumi. It's just earth. And that is Bina Prakriti Ashtada, and it's my energy. And so if we're using this soil for Brazil, we're using it for like an invention, something that we came up. You know what I mean? Like, you just say something ridiculous. You get hit on the head, or somebody says, "What's your name?" and slaps you on the back. You say, "Oh," and then someone's like, "Oh, nice to meet you." It's just like this made up word. Like Brazil is just this. We just came up with the idea. Like America was discovered by this person called Amerigo Vespucci, and so it's called America henceforth. But it's really like, it's just Bina, or it's just Bhumi, it's just land. But we're calling things, we're giving things names in relationship with us, and that's why they're valueless. They really have no meaning, because we don't know what the world is, and it doesn't belong to us to name. And this is what's important about the Vedic literature, is that Krishna is giving us the name of things. Krishna is giving us his name, so we don't make up a name for God. Krishna is giving us the name of what the world is, so we don't just go and invent a concept and separate the world in a wrong way. And we're just separating the world into how many different countries, but Krishna is saying, it's just one earth. It's just Bharat Varsha. Or we separate people in different races, but Krishna is dividing things based on guna and karma. He says, you don't worry about the skin color, you worry about guna and karma. So what's nice about worrying about that is that you may have an initial condition of guna and karma. I may be born an idiot, but if I meet a devotee and they tell me, you check your being an idiot and you sit down and chant Hare Krishna, then my guna can change, and so can my karma. But you can be born, but if you learn to see the world based on these kinds of distinctions that we invent, or these kinds of distinctions that we focus on, like skin color, there's no way of changing skin color. I mean, there's surgery to do it, but that's not the point. The point is that we get obsessed in the distinctions that we see, but we should learn to see the world in the distinctions that Krishna gives us. So the distinction is that there are 8 material energies, not that, there's how many elements on the periodic table. That may be worthwhile, but we should know, we should learn how to see those elements on the periodic table as belonging within the 8 divided energies, and know that those belong to Krishna. So then we'll know that's how they should be used. So it's not that somebody invents plutonium and now plutonium can be used as a catalyst for a nuclear bomb. Nobody invented Bhumi but Krishna. So Krishna wants it to be used in this one way. Because the thing is that when we invent something, we begin to think that it belongs to us. And I don't want to go on too long because I feel like I'm going on a tangent, but I think that this is another significance of initiation is that the spiritual master is giving us a name so we can begin to belong to Krishna again. We can see ourselves as belonging to Krishna and not see that we're belonging to the material world, because Kali Kale Nama Rupe Krishna Avatara. the avatar of this age is the holy name, but it's not only the holy name of Krishna, but it's also the word of God, the word of Krishna that is coming to clear out all of our confusion, because we're looking at this world and we're being given names to divide it into certain ways, but those names that we are using to call it are not the actual names of those things. You know, so we see a diamond over there and we call it one thing, but we don't see it as this is actually one of Krishna's energies. Because and Prabhupada gives the example of, I'll just close with this. If somebody finds $100 bill on the floor and they keep it in their pocket to use it, that's a thief. So if we see a diamond and we put it in our pocket and say, how am I going to make money off this? We're a thief, because that diamond doesn't belong to us. We don't know how to produce it. Krishna made it. And so the thing to do, so we shouldn't steal it. And then there's a person that finds $100 bill on the floor and says, that's not my $100. I'm not interested in it. So the first example is the bogey, the person who wants to enjoy everything. And the person that rejects the $100 is the tyagi. So they want to reject it. And Prabhupada says that this is like the jnanis. The jnanis have knowledge that the material world is not enjoyable, and it's kind of like the sour grapes mentality of like, oh, it probably wouldn't be enjoyable anyway. I'm not interested in this world. But that's also not the right point, because it's not yours to reject either. So the correct position is the position of the devotee that gets the $100 and goes to the temple to see, you know, can Krishna have nice flowers, or can we buy books, or what can we feed Krishna, or who that I know doesn't have a japa mala, and then we can get them a japa mala. So that's the correct way. Or can we donate to the temple of the Vedic planetarium? Can we build this wonderful Adbhuta temple so that all the devotees can see how Krishna sees the universe? So Kunti Maharani is seeing things that way. Nama Rupa Bhyam. She's saying that Nama, their name, and Rupa, their name and form, have no meaning if it's not related with Krishna. And so this is what we would like, right? I would like to receive a name, and I would like to be able to see the world properly, because I make so many mistakes because I don't see the world properly, because I don't see things in relationship with Krishna. And ultimately, if, you know, even though pure devotion is the most worthwhile goal of having, even if we simply want to be kind to each other, even if we simply want to love our partners and our dogs and our children and our relatives, then, you know, knowing their names and forms in relationship with Krishna will make us better at loving them. So that if I'd like to know what you all thought of that, or what stuck out to you. But I'll leave off for there. And I thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to try to serve you in some way. I'm very grateful for that. Hare Krishna. Okay. Well, I hope everyone has a wonderful day. I hope you get to chant a very nice japa. And if you have any thoughts later, you can always reach out to me privately.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.